design and throw out there that games are awesome because they can incorporate lots of different media. So if you want to collaborate, let's talk. So, in 2014, I designed a game called Go Extinct. Many of you are familiar with it, but it's a bit like Go Fish in that you're collecting sets of closely related animals, which you must read an accurate evolutionary tree in order to determine. So I'll go over most of the rules in a little bit, but I'm going to be using that game to explore today's hypothesis, which is that I think board games are uniquely suited to teach not only the dynamic, systems-based scientific concepts that we need to convey, but I think board games can also convey the scientific values we want to convey to students, like caring for biodiversity. So to get to maybe this strange conclusion, I'm going to divide this into 3 parts. It's game talk, so we need a progress bar. First, we're going to start with the MDA framework, which is a really popular game design and game research framework to kind of break down games. Then I'm going to introduce you to one of my latest projects, which is DIY Go Extinct. It's a free online platform where kids can make their own versions of Go Extinct about whatever they think is the coolest. And then I'll introduce some new game experiments that PS come to the demo later today. So, to introduce the MDA framework, I'll use it to explain how Go Extinct works and give examples of each step of this MDA framework. It is an acronym. So the M stands for rules and components of the game. So these are kind of the rigid things that don't change. And mechanics in the game of Go Extinct include the specific topology of the evolutionary tree that I've used, as well as rules like you must collect all of the descendants from one of these common ancestors in the solid colored circles. So for example, to get all of the terrible lizards, you must get all of those 4 animals on the cards. The other important mechanic from Go Extinct that I think drives a lot of learning is that you can ask for any level on the tree. So you could ask for the chicken, but you could also ask for holy heads. So what happens when players set this in motion? This is where you get the dynamics, and this is the exciting part. This is where you're making those choices, having those interactions with the other players, and you're making decisions about, should I ask for the chicken and give away everything in my hand? Or should I play it safe and ask for those holy heads, and maybe I'll get some progress on some of those other plays that I'm collecting. So all of those choices you're going to be making in real time, depending on what you've been able to listen and infer from the other players. So all of this leads to the aesthetics. We're all humans, and so we're making stories about what our experience is like and why all these things are happening. We're remembering those points of tension, points of excitement. Someone gives you the chicken finally. So they define this as an interpretive narrative, but game designers all talk about it as fun. So this is, I hope, what players come away with, is that science is fun, and they do learn. So I think the MDA framework is a really cool thing to look at for scientists because there's an interesting parallel between that and the scientific method. And I'll demonstrate it with, I think observations are very similar to mechanics in that they're rigid. This is what we have to work with. They're repeatable in the same conditions. This is what we know about the natural world. So our job as scientists is to start thinking about how this works in systems. How does evolution work? How does the carbon cycle work? How does this all put together? And I'd also like to suggest that our scientific method itself is very dynamic and system-based, and that we're always testing hypotheses over and over and over again. And of course, this also ends in an interpretation step, which we all know and love, right? This is the fun part. This is where we get to build more stories and add on to that grand narrative that we're already pretty sure about. So I think this is also where science gets to fun. And I would, at least for me, and I think a lot of people here, I think this step is what gets us through those hard but boring data collection steps. Geometric metrics, anyone? Okay. So the other cool thing about the MDA is that it stresses that designers and players approach games from opposite angles. So you notice that I explained it from mechanics to aesthetics. Players, when they open the box, they're starting from aesthetics. They're looking at the pretty animals, they're finding their favorite ones, they're thinking about how to beat their big brother. They've got this, they've already started to make their story, and it's only through playing the game that they go deeper. I think we have a similar situation as scientists communicating science. I think generally the scientific students are starting with the story and less frequently encounter information about how the scientific method works and what kind of observations we start working with. And as scientists, I think we need to help science students get deeper and, like scientists, practice thinking not only how observations lead to new interpretations, but how the certain observations might impact the interpretations that we can get to. So looking at it from both angles. And that's the cool part, right? That's the interesting part. So to illustrate the power of story building, I'd like to introduce you to Jane. And she was a 4th grader that I met while I was making Go Extinct. And one of the first things I learned about her is that she loved cats. She was so obsessed with cats, and she introduced me to these Warriors books by Aaron Hunter, which I guess are super popular. They're like the Animorphs of my generation. Anyway, so she asked if she could make a cat version of Go Extinct, and I thought that was a great idea. And so here we are sitting in the school library. On the computer is the latest phylogeny of Felidae from Science, and there's a very technical phylogenetic tree, but she is not afraid of it. And we are looking at it, and we're talking about decisions about what cats to include to get the topology of the tree. We maybe didn't call it that, but we were making those kinds of decisions while she was also thinking about what cats would be most interesting for her friends to experience. So she's thinking about the observations, like what is rigid about that phylogenetic tree, as well as the story that she's going to get to tell to her friends. And when she finished her science project, she understood what an evolutionary tree said. It was amazing. So what I wanted to do was to scale this. And this is why when the stars aligned in Australia, I made the free online game design platform, DIY Go Extinct. And the link is there. Please check it out. It's live. So the first thing you do, this is a picture of what the starting page is. You choose which flora, fauna, or fossil you would like to have a game about. And so here's a little video of how it works. It's a little tricky, it's sped up so you can see the whole thing. Once you pick your tree, Australian megafauna in this case, make some aesthetic changes, make sure that tree looks really cool, move the clades around, and then you start making decisions about what animals specifically you want to include. And this is where I think it communicates just how much information is embedded in the trees. There's only one place for placental carnivore. So do you want the dingo or the elephant seal? What are your friends going to like the most? What do you like the most? And these are some of the decisions that you're making over and over and over again as you go through this tree. So there's a lot of animals to look at, and you always get to pick your favorite picture. I think that's very important. So, you also get to pick your color style. How about retro? Ooh, maybe that's too retro. Okay, let's try cools. That's pretty good. Okay, so now we make our cards. Those are all of the animals you've chosen with the same photos that you've chosen on the board, of course, and then when you get to the end, you print out your PDFs. And then you cut them out, and then you play it with your friends as many times as you would like. So here's the launch event in Brisbane last year. You can see participants are really enjoying their trees. That girl over there is even taking a picture of her retro-colored tree. We did print out and give them their boards and their cards so they could play it at home. And what's really cool is that every tree was every game was different. And now we got a lot of dinosaurs, which is great. And this is what we've been talking about a lot in this conference, is that dinosaurs are amazing. They're basically like time-traveling monsters, and like what isn't cool about that? That's immediately imagination capturing. How about marine sponges? Right? The thing is, like, I didn't have to tell any stories to get kids, they already know about the Great Barrier Reef. It's something they're very proud of. This has been a place-based science outreach for sure. But what was cool is I got a ton of comments like that. So that there's so much more there than I ever imagined. And I think that's another way to capture imagination. And importantly, I think this is the reason why we scientists care about biodiversity. We don't care about biodiversity because we know every single story. We care about it because we know there's so much potential for something new. And that we could figure out a new story if we find the right collaborators, the right tools, et cetera, et cetera. And so this is something that we can sell to kids. Kids love this. And I think game design is probably one of many ways to impart this kind of experience of science. We're going to test this in a few months in a regional part of Australia where, unfortunately, conservation is also equated with lucrative job loss. So I could talk way more about Australian politics if you want, I'm excited to deploy 120 kids with their own biodiversity board games there. So if you remember one thing from my talk, please let it be this, is that giving kids more creative agency in whatever form that your outreach takes, I think that can help convey these scientific values like caring for biodiversity. I'd also like to just give a shout out to our sister session yesterday, which I think this echoes a lot of what was said, is that bringing the humanness back into science and illustrating how your unique perspectives, your unique way of thinking, your unique interests, like be it DNA or dinosaurs, both, is going to be very important, and not only that, critical to improving science. So I just want to tease a few scientific method games that I've brought with me today. I would love your feedback on these. I think because of the parallels with games, game design and science, I think another way to get kids excited about science is to really dive into that scientific method. So you saw Lisa White introduce the How Science Works framework yesterday. This is a co-op game inspired by a pandemic where you save the universe in Strange Universe. The other game is called Artful Eye, and it communicates the similarities between science and art, both in the keen observations you need to generate and also in the creative interpretation to really fun prompts. So if we run out of time in the demo, then find me later at the conference and we try it out. So I just want to end with the next chapter for Go Extinct, which is also inspired by a very talented young scientist and science communicator named Bailey Harris, who started the Stardust series of books when she learned that we are literally stardust. And she was so excited about that idea, she wanted to bring it to more kids. And her latest book is all about evolution, and she chose carnivores as a lot of the examples of evolutionary processes. So they reached out to me, and we are going to make a game about carnivores. It's going to be a Go Extinct game all about carnivores. So we've branched out from cats just a little bit. And if you'd like, you can support us on Kickstarter in August, and I'll put a link on the last slide to that. So with that, I'd just like to thank a whole heap of people for supporting me throughout these game design adventures, especially funding from Advanced Queensland and the U.S. Embassy for making DIY Go Extinct a thing. And with that, I'd love to take any questions, and there's the sign up link for Stardust Go Extinct. So thanks again.
We do have time for some questions.
Yeah.
This is a more technical question. For your website, were you the ones who came up with the UI UX interface for that all? Because it looks super awesome and like user friendly.
Great question. So I'm going to give a huge shout out to Tim Smith at Evidently So. He works in Australia, but he does like science communication for all sorts of people. So yeah, I can give you his email if you're interested.
What age does these, do you think people are most into this?
For games?
Yeah, for these, for this particular one.
For the DIY Go Extinct, I think it's probably most engaging for middle school. I think I would love to make the platform more open-ended for high school students, especially like getting to play with the tree topology and structure. I think that was one of the most valuable exercises with Jane, but it's just a huge technological hurdle at the moment, but it's not horrible. Yeah.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. Since you're in Australia, is there any plans on bringing this towards more Aboriginal cultures? Because a lot of them work in, their trees are very important, life trees are very important. I could see this easily being applied on a cultural aspect for them to learn more science.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to do that. I think I lacked the knowledge or collaborators when I was making this. Some Aboriginal depictions of humans and some extinct animals are included in some of the choices, but that's kind of surface level at this point. But we should keep talking about that.
One quick question. Do your players use like Discord or some method for communicating while they play?
What?
There's an app called Discord where players of games online, can talk to each other, communicate
Oh.
with each other while they're playing.
That's mostly for video games.
Yeah, there's mostly for video games. So this is the DIY platform. You like design a game, but then you print it out, and the use case is that you're all sitting around a table next to each other. Cool. All right. Thanks again.